The fear of death, a silent and omnipresent prison. Do you fear death? Not the philosophical distant idea, the abstract concept that fills books and lectures. I'm talking about the real end. That visceral feeling that after the last breath, there will be only silence. The absolute darkness that swallows the light from your eyes. The complete dissolution of yourself. The final disappearance of who you are, of everything you think, feel, and believe yourself to be. This question isn't about metaphysics, it's about the fundamental anguish that resides at the core of the human experience. Epicurus, in his quest for serenity, tried to soothe us within seemingly unshakable logic. He said that death is nothing to us, because while we are alive, it has not yet arrived, and when it does, we no longer are. The Greek philosophers sought to free humanity from the terror of the unknown, arguing that death and life are mutually exclusive states, impossible to experience simultaneously. His logic was a brilliant stroke of reason, but in treating death as a purely logical problem, he ignored that, for human beings, it is, above all, an existential and emotional matter. In trying to convince us of the insignificance of the end, he, without meaning to, revealed just how profoundly death dominates us, not in its reality, but in its anticipation. The true hell, as we see, doesn't begin after death. It begins in the fear of it. It's a hell that manifests in life, corroding our existence from the inside out. It's a fear that paralyzes, that chains us to a life of caution and regret. Because of it, we hesitate to love with total surrender, with the vulnerability of someone who knows love can end. We back away from risks, preferring mediocre safety to the glory of a courageous and authentic life. It prevents us from serving with genuine generosity, from living with the truth our soul craves. The fear of death is the hell that burns us before we're even in the grave. It isn't an event, but a state of being, a dense fog that obscures reality, distorting our perceptions and decisions. It insinuates itself as a constant whisper deep in the soul. An invisible disquiet, a nameless anxiety we can't place. It's an anguish that lurks behind every choice, every desire, every breath. And this hell doesn't need fire to burn. It consumes us from within, silently, with a chilling elegance. It's like a terminal illness that smiles while it rots the vital organs of our existence, leaving behind only the shell of who we could have been. Epicurus's attempt to convince us of death's insignificance only highlights the overwhelming power it holds over us, shaping every aspect of our lives, even when we try to ignore it. This escape from the truth shows up in our culture of distraction. The addiction to news, the endless scrolling on social media, compulsive consumption, all to avoid the silent thought of our own finitude. We live in a relentless flight from the inevitable, and in this desperate race against time, we lose everything that is essential. We become obsessed with controlling every variable of our lives, dependent on superficial comfort, slaves to a security that is, in itself, the greatest of illusions. The paradox is cruel. The more we run from death, the less we live. The fear of death is the architect of our masks. It forces us to smile to keep up appearances, to work tirelessly to accumulate possessions we won't take with us, to compete to feel alive, and to post compulsively in pursuit of a digital eternity. All of this is disguised terror. The soul that refuses to face the end already lives in a perpetual hell, the hell of illusion, of superficiality. Epicurus rejected the hell of the gods, laughing at the idea of eternal fire, but he ignored the hell that dwells in the minds of those who have never accepted their own mortality. This hell has many disguises. Fear of old age, fear of illness, fear of loneliness, fear of being forgotten. But at its core, it is always the same monster, the shadow of finitude. It haunts our rooms at night, watches us in the mirror, and walks with us, even when we pretend not to see it. This fear slowly corrodes us, destroying the authenticity of our lives. We make promises we don't keep, hold on to relationships that have long been dead, and embrace routines that have already buried us. Why? Because we don't want to remember that everything has an end. But the paradox is cruel. By denying death, we place it at the center of everything, living a life that is, in the end, paradox of acceptance, and Epicurus, without knowing it, revealed a subtle hell to us. The hell of forgetting that death is part of life. Perhaps hell isn't made of fire or screams, but of the inner silence of someone who has lost their sense of purpose, precisely because they refuse to accept their fate. This hell is the condition of those who live for tomorrow, forgetting that the only time that truly exists is now. Death, after all, is not an enemy, but the limit that gives beauty its form. It's the border that defines the painting, the final note that makes the music truly music. It reminds us of the preciousness of every moment, the importance of every choice, the urgency of living. But if you fear the end, you fear the whole. And if you fear the whole, you never truly live it.
Hell is not in the afterlife. It is now. In every choice driven by panic, in every surrender made out of cowardice, in every love you avoid for fear of losing it. It's a hell that manifests in mediocrity, in the lack of passion, and in a silent
desperation. Epicurus believed in ataraxia, the inner peace of a person who fears nothing. But what he failed to see is that most people prefer the known hell to the unknown heaven. We prefer to live a small, predictable life, protected by invisible fences, than to accept the risk of living intensely, even if it's for a short time. And so, we condemn ourselves. Not because of an angry God or a divine punishment, but because we refuse to look the abyss in the eye. Hell is waking up every day and pretending you have all the time in the world. It's postponing reconciliation. It's delaying forgiveness. It's working for status, not for meaning. It's wishing that everything would last forever, even while knowing that nothing will. It's living like a castaway on an island of illusions while real life passes by, unnoticed. And so, to numb ourselves from this fear, we run. We distract ourselves with an excess of information. We consume goods and experiences that momentarily fill the void. We post to build a digital version of ourselves that we hope will last forever. We buy to feel an illusory sense of control. We get high on the superficiality of the modern world, but deep down, we are still burning, not from pain, but from absence. Absence of presence, of surrender, of truth, of courage. You're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of having lived in vain. This is hell according to Epicurus, a hell that doesn't wait for the end, but begins the moment you flee from the most basic truth of all. You will die. And only those who face this head-on finally begin to live. The irony of Epicurean ataraxia is that the only way to achieve it is through a direct confrontation with one's own mortality, something he, paradoxically, tried to convince us to ignore. Freedom, in the heart of fear, but there's a secret buried in this fear. The fear of death holds, at its core, the key to the deepest freedom. When you stop denying the end, everything that comes before it is illuminated with overwhelming clarity. The taste of bread changes. The touch of skin becomes sacred. Time ceases to be mundane and transforms into a miracle, a precious gift that cannot be wasted. Epicurus didn't understand hell as a place of fire and brimstone, but perhaps, without knowing it, he touched upon what torments us most: the existential emptiness of those who live without purpose, precisely because they fear that everything will end. Hell isn't in others. It is in the non-being, in the non-living, in the non-facing. It's a condition of the soul that refuses to blossom. Living with the awareness of death isn't morbid. It's a spiritual and philosophical act of profound importance. It is the only path to living without regrets, because whoever knows that time is short takes better care of what they do with it. They honor love more because they know it isn't eternal. They forgive faster because they understand that resentment is a waste. They shed their pride and ego's petty concerns because they know these things dissolve in the end. The real hell, the one Epicurus made us see without saying, is the hell of the superficial, the hell of those who pass through life without diving in, of those who exist but don't live, of those who run but never arrive anywhere. You don't need to believe in eternal fire to understand the terror of living as if death didn't exist, because this terror creates a false life, an emotional prison, a religion without a soul, a world where constant noise hides the abyss that awaits us. Epicurus didn't believe in vengeful gods, but he knew, or at least intuited, that a human being could destroy themselves alone, with fear, with silence, with forgetting. This is the modern hell, the hell of distraction, of consumption, of a lack of meaning. But the antidote exists. It lies in lucidity, in acceptance, in waking up, in facing the end, and choosing every day to live as if each day were your last. Not with desperation, but with presence. Death thus becomes the greatest of all teachers. It teaches us that life is not an infinite journey, but a finite gift, to be lived with the utmost intensity and truth. Perhaps hell doesn't need to be avoided. Perhaps it needs to be crossed, so that on the other side, you find true life. The fear of death, which imprisons us, is also the key to our liberation, as long as we have the courage to face it and transform it from an obstacle into a source of meaning.